Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, no quorum in the Texas State House. Democrats flee the state to protest a congressional redistricting bill. What Republican lawmakers plan to do next. Melina Weiskup has the latest. President Trump ramps up the pressure, warning India over Russian oil and giving Vladimir Putin just days to call a ceasefire. And in a cultural twist, the president weighs in on an American Eagle ad featuring actress Sydney Sweeney. Mari Otsu at the White House. Tariff money has to go somewhere. Should it go to working Americans or pay down the debt? Kevin Hogan brings us an exclusive data report on whether a proposed $600 rebate check could be financed by tariff revenue alone. Hamas and the Islamic Jihad released disturbing videos of hostages held in captivity. Meanwhile, shots were fired at a group of residents near an aid distribution site in the Gaza Strip. Jason Perry reports. President Trump says he has deployed nuclear submarines amid tensions with Russia, and a U.S. special envoy could soon travel to Moscow. Arian Podstar has the Russia update.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. The Texas House failed to reach a quorum today as Republican lawmakers try to pass a congressional redistricting bill. This comes as Democrat lawmakers have fled the state to protest the measure.
A quorum is not present. The roll has been called, and a quorum has not been established. I am prepared to recognize a motion to place a call on the House and any other motions necessary to compel the return of absent members. Should such a motion prevail, I will immediately sign the warrants for the civil arrest of the members who have said they will not be here.
Texas Republican House Speaker Dustin Burrows says he'll do everything in his power to establish quorum and move the House forward by any and all means available. He's urging Democrat lawmakers to return now and fulfill their duty. The next session of the Texas House is at 1 p.m. Central Time tomorrow. And Governor Greg Abbott warns he will seek to remove the Democratic state lawmakers from office if they don't return by today. NTD's Melina Weiskup has more details.
Democratic state lawmakers from Texas are now staying in Illinois after fleeing the state. Dozens of lawmakers left Sunday in protest of the Republican bill to redraw the state's congressional maps. The new maps could give Republicans a competing chance in Democrat stronghold districts.
We did not make a decision lightly, but we come here today with absolute moral clarity.
Texas's Attorney General warned that they could face fines or arrests for leaving. Republican Governor Greg Abbott is giving lawmakers until 3 p.m. Central Time Monday to return, otherwise face removal from office. The governor warned some lawmakers could face felonies for soliciting money to pay for potential fines. He wrote, "I will use my full extradition authority to demand the return to Texas of any potential out-of-state felons." Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker has said he would protect the lawmakers.
And to stand in solidarity with you and send a clear message to all Americans. We will not let power go unchecked.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Or let your voices and their voices go unheard.
Lawmakers can't pass bills in the 150-member Texas House without at least 2/3 of them present. The Texas House Speaker said he still plans to meet as scheduled today, and if members aren't present, he says all options will be on the table. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
President Trump is upping the stakes, announcing higher tariffs on India as the Kremlin's deadline for a ceasefire with Ukraine looms. If Russia doesn't agree to peace by Friday, the U.S. will impose new sanctions and secondary tariffs. And in a cultural twist, the president weighs in on an American Eagle ad featuring actress Sydney Sweeney. NTD's Mari Otsu has more from the White House.
Get a deal where people stop getting killed.
President Trump doubling down Monday morning and announcing that he'll be substantially raising the tariff paid by India to the United States over its purchases of Russian oil. This comes less than 1 week after the president announced that India will pay a 25% tariff plus an unspecified penalty for what the president said was an over-reliance on Russian energy and military equipment. Also last week, President Trump cut the 50-day ultimatum he'd issued to Russian President Vladimir Putin to 10 days. Trump says if the Kremlin doesn't agree to a ceasefire with Ukraine by Friday, Russia will face sanctions and secondary tariffs.
Well, there'll be sanctions, but they seem to be pretty good at avoiding sanctions. You know, they're wily characters, and they're pretty good at avoiding sanctions, so we'll see what happens.
Meanwhile, the European Union announced today that it will delay its tariffs on the U.S. for 6 months. The tariffs had been set to take effect on Thursday. This delay allows for the EU and the U.S. to further negotiate and finalize a joint statement to enact the political agreement the nations came to last week. And in lighter news, President Trump praising American Eagle's latest ad campaign featuring actress Sydney Sweeney.
That who was?
Sydney Sweeney. She's like a very hot actress right now.
She's a registered Republican?
Yes.
Oh, now I love her ad. Is that right? Is Sydney Sweeney? You'd be surprised at how many people are Republicans. That's what I wouldn't have known, but I'm glad you told me that. If Sydney Sweeney is a registered Republican, I think her ad is fantastic.
The ad tagline reads, Sydney Sweeney has great genes.
But just so we're clear, this is not me telling you to buy American Eagle jeans.
Sydney Sweeney has great genes.
You see what I did there, right?
Some of its harshest critics, from TikTok to academia, claim it promotes eugenics with its play on the word genes. American Eagle Outfitters responded to the ad's controversy, saying its campaign is and always was about the genes. The president took to Truth Social this morning to elaborate on his praise of the ad, contrasting its success with that of what he calls woke Jaguar and Bud Light ads, which triggered backlash and led to financial loss. As of Monday afternoon, shares of American Eagle surged more than 20%. Reporting from the White House, Mariotsu, NTD News.
On to the tariff rebate debate. Should money collected from tariffs go into your pocket or be used to pay down the national debt? Yesterday, President Trump again floated the idea of sending out dividends to low to middle income families, and a bill has been introduced in Congress to do just that. But is there enough revenue to go around? Our data reporter Kevin Hogan has the numbers on this.
Here's your tariff rebate reality check. Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri proposed giving out $600 checks to eligible Americans. That would cost a lot of money because NTD estimates that about 240 million Americans would be eligible. Now, generally speaking, if you're an adult making $75,000 or less, you might be eligible. Again, that's a very rough simplification of that bill. It's pretty complicated, but each parent would get one, and every additional check would go to every dependent child. So if you make more income than that, you could qualify for a reduced check, but it tapers off pretty quickly as income increases. Now, checks of a minimum $600 could be for those 240 million people. That's a tall order, but tariffs are bringing in a lot of money. So much that monthly records for this year are being broken, like in July, for example. But how much money total would you need to back up that $600 check? That's the million-dollar question, right? So you have the checks going out to Americans in this hypothetical scenario. What do you actually need? What's that total sum? Based on our estimates, the total tariff revenue you would need is about $145 billion. That is the target. So that's these hypothetical checks. So soon, we'll see if that's realistic for this year. But first, it's important to understand where that money's coming from. Are American import companies that actually have to pay the duty taking the hit, thus redistributing wealth from companies to the public? Or is tax being passed on to the American consumer? Or are exporters lowering their prices to continue accessing the American market? It might be a mixture, but it's unclear exactly who's paying. Now, that $145 billion, let's take a look at the data. So the Treasury estimates that in that particular instance, you're going to see that revenue to date from tariffs, that is up about $115 billion as of the end of July. And that total sum needed for the $600 checks is $145 billion, right? That's the target right there. So you can see the U.S. needs to make up about $30 billion more to close that gap. So before Trump's so-called Liberation Day, you could see that tariffs were only coming in maybe at about $7 billion a month. But after Liberation Day, that rate started jumping up to $28 billion a month. Remember, July, that's about a four-fold increase. So on the high end, if that rate keeps up, you can expect to see about $250 billion at the end of the year. So that's a lot of money. And what does that mean? That means that you clear this hurdle and your $600 checks are all set. So now, we don't know what's going to happen. Some trade deals have been made that reduce tariffs. So that upper bound might not really materialize, but we still have to wait and see what will happen to tariffs on imports from Canada and China, big U.S. trade partners. So that upper bound is possible. That would mean the $600 checks could easily be backed by tariff revenue, and they might even jump up to $1,000 checks, like the bill would call for in that case. So now, a slightly more realistic scenario is a medium amount of tariff revenue. That's what this would look like right here. So you're seeing about $200 billion at the end of the year. That also would cross that threshold so that your $600 checks are backed by those tariff revenues. Now remember, that's something between the pre-Liberation Day rates and that July record rate. So in that case, again, $200 million, you're past that threshold. And now, it could be possible to completely back those $600 checks with that amount. Now, those checks could even rise up to $800 each in that particular case. But what if tariffs go way down all of a sudden to pre-Liberation Day rates? That's the lower bound. This is what that would look like. So you're seeing about $147 billion in tariff revenue, just barely crossing that threshold so that all of your $600 checks would be financed by tariff revenue. So even on the lower bound, that $600 check is a realistic possibility, and no non-tariff national treasure would have to be shelled out. So now, here's what Senator Josh Hawley says about this proposal. He says, my legislation would allow hardworking Americans to benefit from the wealth that Trump's tariffs are returning to this country. Now, if that tariff money doesn't go to those hardworking Americans, like Hawley says, it could go towards paying off the national debt. And that debt is estimated to be north of $37 trillion. That's NTD's live debt clock at the moment. So we have a couple data points in the mix. Maybe it's 36.9 trillion on July 1st. Anyway, so we just say, you say, okay, if the U.S. made $200 billion from tariffs, that could shave off about 0.5% from the national debt. So now that might not seem like it's so significant, but that could make a little bit of a dent, 0.5%, right? Now, what about these checks? Is this a good idea or not? That's part of this debate. Here's what E.J. Antony, a chief economist at the Heritage Foundation, says. He acknowledges that it might be a political advantage to give out money to voters in your district, but he says when the annual deficit is over $1 trillion, the priority has to be getting that down and not giving the Treasury another outlay. So, you see, if you have a choice, you have to consider the larger debt because, again, that can cause inflation, all sorts of other problems, that invisible tax, they call it. So are you going to see a $2,400 check if you have a family of four? Among Republican senators, some who are aligned with Trump could favor it, but others are skeptical. Again, starting that large debt. Now, the Senate hadn't scheduled a vote for it as of Sunday morning, and we're expecting the Trump administration to give more details on spending related to tariffs in the weeks to come. Back to you.
And our everyday folks on board with the idea of government checks from tariff revenue. NTD's Sam Wong was out on the National Mall in D.C. to hear from the people.
Over the weekend, President Trump was talking about perhaps, giving some of those dividends from all these tariffs revenue that we've earned in the past few months to mid and lower income Americans. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Look at Saudi Arabia. What happens in Saudi Arabia? Everybody makes money off the oil. So if the country is making that much money, either you give some of it back to America, if we're in a surplus, I should say, right? Or cut the taxes.
Oh, it'd have to be a good thing, but it's not. I don't look for it to happen, though.
My thoughts are, what's he going to give me, $1,000? What's that going to do in the long run? I don't think that's going to help most of us, but I think it will appease a hell of a lot of people.
I think it would be amazing for the government to actually distribute money that they have brought in because of tariffs, as opposed to distributing money that the people have paid them through taxes.
Absolutely. Whether it's through a child tax credit, an educational credit, you have hard-working Americans that may have not had the benefit of secondary education, that work hard every day. Maybe they can't achieve that level, but their children can, and you need to help support that.
Would you rather get a check from the government first, or would you rather see the government pay down the debt?
Well, pay down the debt because I have grandchildren, and it's going to affect them and their children.
I'd rather have the government pay down the debt, and because there's too many of us. I mean, in the long run, it's like giving a bunch of ants a tiny little thing. There's too many of us. What are you getting us? And you're just paying us off.
Personally, I'd rather get a check from the government and use it and invest it and make some money with that. As Reagan's tax cuts showed, that money stays in circulation when it goes to the people, and it eventually gets brought back to the government anyway.
They got to have the government pay down the debt first. Pay down the debt first, then start distributing money.
Pay down the debt, because otherwise we're leaving that debt for our children, their children, and beyond. If you can't get your debt under control, how can you be a prosperous nation?
In the Middle East, Hamas and the Islamic Jihad recently released videos of 2 hostages still held in the Gaza Strip. Israel's foreign ministry has now called for a special UN Security Council session on the hostages. NTD's Jason Perry has the story and a warning. This report contains footage that some viewers may find disturbing.
The Islamic Jihad recently released footage of an Israeli hostage who's been in captivity in the Gaza Strip for almost 2 years.
My name is Rom Braslavsky. I'm 22 years old, from Jerusalem. I am suffering with pain that doesn't look good in my foot. I can't stand and I can't walk to the bathroom. Yesterday I barely ate a plate of rice. I can't sleep. I can't live.
And over the weekend, the Hamas terrorist group released footage of one of their hostages. He's seen here pointing to a calendar of what he had eaten each day.
Then lentils, then I ate nothing. Lentils, again I ate nothing. And then again I ate nothing, and again I ate nothing, and again I ate nothing. This is for 2 days now. This whole can is for 2 days, so I won't die.
And afterward, he was seen digging what he says could be his own grave. The families of both hostages gave permission for the videos to be shown. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave this message.
They want to break us using these horror videos. And through the false horror propaganda, it is spreading around the world. But we will not break. I am filled with an even stronger determination to free our hostages, to eliminate Hamas, to ensure that Gaza no longer poses a threat to the state of Israel.
Israel's foreign minister, Gideon Sa'ar, who stood in front of a picture of one of the hostages, said he initiated a special UN Security Council session about the hostages.
The world must put an end to the phenomena of kidnapping civilians. It must be front and center on world stage.
And he added this about the lack of coverage in the media.
The horrible images of the hostages were painfully missing from the front pages of the New York Times, the Washington Post.
Meanwhile, in the Gaza Strip, shots were fired toward a crowd of people near a humanitarian aid distribution site. However, no details were provided on who was shooting. Last month, Hamas issued a warning for residents not to cooperate with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, saying their distribution sites were too dangerous for residents. Israel has accused Hamas of wanting to control the aid to help support its terrorist activity. Israel has also released footage of a reported Hamas terrorist shooting at people at a distribution site. Jason Perry, NTD News.
President Trump says he has deployed nuclear submarines amid tensions with Russia, and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff could soon travel to Moscow to meet with President Vladimir Putin. NTD's international correspondent Ariane Postar has a Russia update.
They are in the region, where they have to be.
President Trump says he deployed nuclear submarines to face possible Russian aggression. According to Trump, the submarines are, quote, in the region. The move comes in response to statements by former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev. Last week, Trump imposed a Friday deadline for Russia to end the Ukraine war. Medvedev, who's now the chairman of Russia's Security Council, responded last week, saying each new ultimatum is a threat and a step towards war, not between Russia and Ukraine, but with his own country. If Russia misses the Friday deadline, Trump says he'll impose more sanctions on Moscow and any country doing business with Russia.
Well, there'll be sanctions, but they seem to be pretty good at avoiding sanctions. You know, they're wily characters.
Russia is now trying to negotiate with the United States. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff might travel to Moscow this week for talks. On Sunday, Trump commented about this week's plans.
He may be going, I think next week, Wednesday or Thursday, may be going to Russia. They would like to see him. They've asked that he meet, so we'll see what happens.
The Kremlin on Monday said President Vladimir Putin is happy to meet with Witkoff. According to a spokesperson, Moscow considers the contact to be important, substantial, and very useful. Meanwhile, at the NATO headquarters in Brussels on Monday,
the Dutch are just the first of many. You're going to see a series of announcements in the coming weeks.
The U.S. ambassador to NATO comments on the U.S. selling weapons to NATO and Ukraine. Last month, Trump said the U.S. will supply weapons to NATO members, which can then send them to Ukraine. This includes the highly sought-after Patriot missile systems. The Netherlands recently said it would contribute over $500 million to the plan.
When we announced this facility that allowed our NATO allies to buy U.S. equipment and provide that to Ukraine for their defense, we had a lot of our allies raise their hand and line up. A lot of them are coming together.
But he added that the fighting will be stopped not by more weapons, but rather through a diplomatic solution, which the U.S. is working on. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Coming up, foreigners may soon be required to post a $15,000 bond to enter the U.S. Jack Bradley tells us how the move may prevent visa overstays. 6 more states have updated their SNAP rules after working with the Department of Health and Human Services, and Secretaries Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Brooke Rollins give a cooking demo in D.C. Jason Blair joins us live for more on Maha Monday. And another fast-moving wildfire has exploded in California's central coast, forcing evacuations and threatening homes. Tens of thousands of acres have burned as crews work to contain the blaze. Christina Corona brings us the details when we return. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. The State Department may soon require foreign nationals to pay a bond of up to $15,000 to enter the U.S. The move would mainly target countries with high visa overstay rates. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
International travelers may need to post a bond of up to $15,000 to enter the U.S. Now that money will be returned to the traveler if they don't overstay their visa. The rule won't apply to every country, and those countries affected will be announced in about 2 weeks. That's also when this year-long pilot program will begin. The State Department says that the rule will apply to those countries with high rates of people overstaying their visas, countries that have deficient screening and vetting processes, according to U.S. authorities, and countries that don't require proof of residency to obtain citizenship. The bonds could be anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000, and this is the first time visa bonds will be implemented in the U.S. The first Trump administration floated the idea of launching a similar program back in 2020, but it wasn't implemented due to travel disruptions during the COVID pandemic. Now keep in mind, this comes as federal law enforcement is stepping up arrests of illegal immigrants, not just those who came in illegally, but also those who came in legally and then overstayed. ICE agents, for instance, arrested a police officer in Maine last month because they say he overstayed his visa and then went to purchase a firearm. Now their chief of police says that he was there legally and after immigrating to the U.S. from Jamaica in 2023, and so they're investigating. Now this comes as the Trump administration is considering changes to the H-1B visa, which allows foreign workers to be employed. They're concerned about U.S. tech companies allegedly abusing the system, laying off American workers to hire foreigners to do the same job but pay them much less, which isn't technically illegal, but it doesn't fall in line with the America and Americans First agenda. We also saw that back in June, the Trump administration outright banned citizens from 12 countries from entering the U.S. That's to prevent foreign terrorists, gang members, and other security threats from coming from those countries. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
6 more states have updated their SNAP rules after working with the Department of Health and Human Services. Following that announcement, Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins went to the National Mall in Washington, D.C. to do a live cooking demo for Maha Today. NTD correspondent Jason Blair was there for the event, and he's joining us live from that location right now. Good evening, Jason. Before we get to the cooking event, what's the latest with the SNAP benefit changes?
Hey, Tiffany. Yes, so a number of states have been working with the HHS and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. making policy changes and updates related to food and health, one of those being the SNAP programs for each state. So 6 states have joined in other states. This includes West Virginia, Colorado, Florida, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Texas are saying no more sugary drinks and candy will be allowed on the SNAP benefit program. And this is joining Arkansas, Idaho, Utah, Indiana, Iowa, and Nebraska, making 12 states total making this move. Now, Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins just said that these SNAP benefit programs are for families to help them afford nutritious food, and that people can choose to drink sugary drinks like sodas if they want to. However, taxpayers should not be paying for it. Now, Secretary Kennedy says that there are going to be updates to the dietary guidelines coming very soon. He says the previous ones had over 400 pages and were driven by commercial interests. He did talk about that a little bit earlier. Here's a clip from today.
We are going to release dietary guidelines that are 4, 5, or 6 pages long, that are understandable, that are simple, and will allow people to make good choices about their food.
And Secretary Kennedy says that schools, prisons, and the military will also be making changes to follow those guidelines as well once they come out. Back to you.
And Jason, Secretary Kennedy and Secretary Rollins were out on the National Mall for a cooking demo at the Great American Farmers Market. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so they just did a live cooking demo not that long ago from a stage here nearby at the food market here going on all week. So Secretary Rollins made a peach and goat cheese salad, and Secretary Kennedy whipped up a blueberry smoothie. And I might add that he did the blending on a blender bike on stage live not that long ago. So this is a family-friendly event happening all week here at the National Mall. It started on Sunday. It's going until Friday. They have lots of events going on. They have cows here. They have goat yoga, which is happening as we speak. I actually have seen quite a few people walking around with yoga mats, so it does seem like a popular event happening right now on the USDA lawn. There are also John Deere tractors around. Smokey the Bear, I'm told, is here somewhere. I have not seen him, but he is supposed to be here all week walking around. There are games, giveaways, and agriculture education for kids. So this is an event going on here at the National Mall until Friday. Back to you.
All right, sounds lively for sure. Jason, as always, thanks for those updates. A massive wildfire is burning along California's central coast. It is scorching more than 60,000 acres and forcing hundreds to evacuate. NTD's Christina Corona has more details on the blaze.
The Gifford fire has scorched nearly 67,000 acres in the Los Padres National Forest and is 3% contained as of early Monday. The fire broke out Friday afternoon near Highway 166 northeast of Santa Maria and has since prompted widespread evacuation orders. According to the U.S. Forest Service, at least 3 people have been injured, including a civilian who was airlifted to a hospital for burn treatment. 2 contract workers were also hospitalized after a utility vehicle rollover. One had moderate injuries and was rescued by helicopter, while the other suffered minor injuries. Officials say 460 structures are currently threatened as the fire burns through dry brush and terrain. Weather conditions on Monday are expected to be mostly sunny and smoky, with afternoon highs reaching the mid-80s to low 90s. Gusty winds and hot, dry conditions are fueling the flames, with wind speeds expected to reach up to 20 miles per hour. Evacuation orders remain in effect for parts of Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo counties, with new areas north of Highway 166 added over the weekend. More than 1,000 firefighters, 50 engines, and several aircraft are battling the blaze from the air and ground. The cause of the fire remains under investigation. Christina Corona, NTD News.
Coming up, a political thriller inspired by true events during the early COVID-19 outbreak, exposing how the Chinese Communist regime concealed critical information and silenced whistleblowers, triggering a global crisis. We speak with the director of the Unrestricted War about why he made the movie and the threats he's faced from the CCP. And doctors exposing a crime against humanity. While the organ transplant industry saves lives, doctors say illegal acts of forced organ harvesting are happening in China, where certain ethnic and faith groups are targeted. David Lamb reports after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. A political thriller inspired by true events during the early COVID-19 outbreak. The film The Unrestricted War exposes how the Chinese Communist regime concealed critical information and silenced whistleblowers, triggering a global crisis. Joining us now to discuss the making of the film is director Yan Ma. Yan, thank you so much for joining us. First, talk to us about what inspired you to make this film.
Yes, so this film is inspired by the pandemic and a few related events. So we mainly focused on the very early days of the pandemic. We wanted to reflect on how all it got started how it all got started and how this local public health crisis turned into a global pandemic.
Now, the title is The Unrestricted War. Talk to us about why that title and how that fits into the COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, we did many research about the early days of the pandemic and also some of the events related to that. And we found how the Chinese Communist Party uses power to censor news and eventually weaponize this whole event to serve their political purpose, and include some of the like technology thefts and commercial espionage activities that are connected to this issue. So all that highly align with the concepts of unrestricted warfare, which is a military strategy they're using to not focusing only on traditional military power, but to use all necessary means to defeat their enemies.
As you mentioned, unrestricted warfare is everything short of what we think of warfare or kinetic commercial military warfare, so lawfare, media, biowarfare, for example. Given that it is very rare to have a film like this that exposes the Chinese regime, whether it's economic coercion or self-censorship, the Chinese regime has seeped into the film industry. How hard was it to make this film? What were some of the challenges you and your team faced?
Well, I mean, as a Chinese-Canadian filmmaker, I knew this from the very beginning of this project. We will face many challenges, even real risks, because for most of my team, including myself, we still have family members in China. They've been facing a huge amount of pressure for what we are doing here. From just my family, for example, they've been harassed and threatened by the National Security Office and local government officials. And some of my immediate family members' income got cut off by the local government since the beginning of the project. So it's almost 2 years now. So we face a very difficult situation here.
Quite incredible that that's happening to you. I'm very sorry about that. Now, this is quite an immersive and cinematic film. Talk to us about why you use the format of a political thriller for this.
Political thriller feels very natural for this topic, for this subject. And I mean, ultimately, any story is about people, right? So to this story that we featured a few characters, including the whistleblower of the pandemic, So we want to show that how individuals facing a powerful government, facing a political environment like this, how they're gonna make the right choice. Can they make the right choice? And so this with this human level in this political environment, it make a great political thriller. And also, as a filmmaker, I do believe that film has a huge power. So we do hope this film can spark meaningful conversations.
And lastly, where and how can people watch The Unrestricted War?
Well, the film will be released on Ganjin World Plus on August 8th. So we can all enjoy the film on Ganjin World.
All right, Yan Ma, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Doctors were rallying in San Francisco this weekend. Kidney, heart, or liver transplants can save lives by giving people the right organs they need. But what happens when the organs are not donated, but taken from live victims? NTD's David Lamb has more.
Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting is exposing the brutal crime that has killed and torn families apart.
Trying to reach out to more doctors, offer information about forced organ harvesting, and we do this in the hope to break through a war that we have faced. We do this now for 19 years. It is an uphill battle, and surprisingly, the most obstacles that we face are coming from the medical community, and specifically from the transplant community.
The nonprofit medical group held this rally alongside Falun Gong practitioners who are targeted for their organs. Forced organ harvesting has been happening since at least 1999, when the Chinese Communist Party sent orders to eradicate ethnic and spiritual groups such as the Tibetan, Christian, and Falun Gong practitioners.
We know this is taking place today. The Chinese government is still hiding it and they deny it, but we need to keep on exposing it. Not enough people know about it. And once enough people know about it, we'll help bring these atrocities to an end.
At the same time, the 5-day World Transplant Congress Conference is being held in San Francisco until Wednesday. The 2025 conference gives experts and researchers ways to explore the latest developments in the industry.
You can still get an organ in China in 1 to 2 weeks. There are websites that you could pull up even just a couple of years ago, advertising organs, getting an organ in 1 to 2 weeks. So that's just not possible to be done ethically. It's just not possible. My mother and brother had transplants, and here in the United States and in Spain, it was 3 to 5 years before you can get an organ. It's just not possible to provide an organ in such a short period of time, even today.
For example, doctors here in America recommend to a patient to go to China, saying, you can get a kidney in 2 weeks, just go to China. Actually, the patient who goes to China triggers the killing of a Falun Gong practitioner or another prisoner of conscience. It is killing on demand.
Dr. Trey and his team of doctors hope to inform the conference and public about the illegal market underpinning the transplant industry. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
Coming up in soccer news, MLL star Lionel Messi is out with a leg injury. Dave Martin joins us with the details when we come back. Now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, plenty going on right now, but let's start in college football as the coach's preseason top 25 poll was released today with Texas ranking first. What stood out to you in this poll?
Yeah, well, not surprisingly anyway, it's dominated by the Big Ten and the SEC. 15 of the top 25 teams are from those two power conferences, including all four, including 1 through 4. Now, the Big 12 did get 5 teams in, but none of them are in the top 10. The ACC got 3. Notre Dame was actually at number 5, and then the only group of 5 team was Boise State at number 25. So Texas was first, followed by defending national champion Ohio State, but they probably won't be 1 and 2 for very long because those two meet up on August 30, which is really week 1 of the season. So that should be definitely a highlight of that week. We also have 2 other top 10 meetings that same week. Number 9 LSU again at number 6 Clemson, as well as number 10 Miami at number 5 Notre Dame. That'll all be on that first weekend. Now, as you said, this was the coaches poll tip. In 1 week from today, we will have the AP poll, so I'm sure we'll be both looking forward to those coming out. See how similar they are. Usually the preseason poll, there's the biggest changes. So yeah, looking forward to that, as I'm sure you are.
I'll have to have a little graph behind you there so you can point out all the differences. Moving to baseball news, though, the Braves won MLB's Speedway Classic yesterday, which is played at the Bristol Motor Speedway. Now, why did baseball stage this kind of event at a NASCAR track?
You know, they didn't exactly say. It certainly was a fun gimmick for the fans, probably for the players too, much like they previously did when they played at those Field of Dream field in Iowa the last couple of years, which was also very popular. It was very cool, though, what they did here, putting a baseball diamond, really a whole baseball field, in the infield of a race car track. You can see it right there. You can see how big this race car track is compared actually to a baseball field. It barely took us up half of it. That includes the stands. So it was certainly an attention grabber for one thing. I would guess they had some ulterior motives as well, trying to pry some NASCAR fans over to baseball and maybe vice versa there. Plus, this was played in Tennessee. There's no actually MLB franchise there. It's possible, too, that baseball could expand soon from 30 to 32 teams. And if that does happen, it seems very likely Tennessee would get one. I mean, surely they already have an NFL team, an NBA team, and an NHL team. So it certainly seems like baseball will be looking at this state for another team there. So either way, though, Tiff, it was a pretty cool looking game, we'll say that.
Definitely visually stunning. Shifting gears to tennis, though, Novak Djokovic pulled out of this week's Cincinnati Open for what was termed as a non-medical reason. What is the significance of this, given that the U.S. Open is later this month?
Yeah, well, this event is considered a tune-up for the U.S. Open, which starts later this month because it is a similar hard court surface. Now, a lot of these major tournaments are scheduled in light of what major comes up next, like how the springtime is usually clay court season in light of the May French Open, which is at a clay court. Now, there's even a grass court event in between the French Open and Wimbledon there. Right now, it's hard court season leading up to the U.S. Open. In fact, Djokovic had already withdrawn from an event this week up in Toronto, citing a groin injury. So his last match still was that July 11 match against #1 ranked Jannik Sinner. Now, if you remember that match, he was clearly limited by some kind of leg issue. He even took a medical timeout to treat what looked like his left thigh area. So we haven't still heard exactly what that injury was, but by the time the U.S. Open starts, it'll have been 6 weeks since he played at all, and even longer since he played on a hard court surface. So it's figures seem we might see a rusty Novak Djokovic at least to begin the U.S. Open. Of course, he has won this event 4 different times though in his career, so maybe he'll be all right, Tiff.
We'll see if muscle memory kicks in. Moving to soccer news, though, Inter Miami captain Lionel Messi suffered a right leg muscle injury in Saturday's match against Necaxa. What is his status going forward?
Yeah, it looks like a timeline for his return is still actually being determined. Now, his Miami club released a statement Sunday that said, quote, Messi underwent medical tests to evaluate the extent of the muscle discomfort he experienced during last night's League Cups match against Necaxa, which forced him to leave the field. The results confirmed a minor muscle injury in his right leg. His medical clearance will depend on his clinical progress and response to treatment. So it sounds like, they don't actually know yet. Now, this happened when Messi seemed to run into a couple of players in the box, stumbled, fell down, and you saw him kind of hit the ground in frustration, clearly knowing something went wrong. A couple of minutes later, he exited for medical reasons. So Messi, of course, is the league's most popular player. He's tied for the league's lead with 18 goals. So this is an injury we will surely be following as well. But as of this point, Tiff, we really don't have too much, except that he's out.
All right, well, David Thomas, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Tiff.
What's it like to be the pilot of the presidential helicopter, and what are the qualifications for the position? Hear from retired Marine Force One pilot John Ballinger tonight on Capitol Report with Steve Lance at 7 p.m. Eastern. And that's all for today's news. For on-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.